You're watching Forget Being Cool.
Welcome to Listening In, the place where music checks in.
Hi, Josh.
Dave, you magnificent person, you.
Yes, Josh.
You thought I was just going to say hi like everybody else does in their intros.
I did. I didn't know I was this. I didn't know I had become this. Anyway, Josh, I picked an album this week.
You did?
And I don't regret my decision at all. In some cases,
as you should not.
Some cases I do slightly regret my decisions. This one is not one of them. This has been a long time since I've listened to Linkin Park, though. And part of that comes from the events of a couple years ago. We don't need to necessarily talk about that if we don't want to. But after those events occurred, and being a person who struggled with depression, right, and anxiety and lots of things, listening to Linkin Park and listening to his vocals became a little difficult. So I loved their music. I absolutely did, but it has been years since I have listened to it. Josh, as you always do, tell me about this album that I picked, because you're my music man. You know the stuff. You know the trivia. You know the history.
All right, so Linkin Park, everyone. These guys burst onto the scene in 2000 with, or 2001, 2000 with Hybrid Theory, and this was still in the height of nu metal. There was DJ scratching on there. There was elements of electronics in the production. There were heavy guitars. There was rapping. There was screaming, and it was fantastic. And then they had to try and follow that up. So here we are on today's episode. We're talking about Linkin Park's sophomore album, Meteora. And this thing starts off with actually a really nice, it almost sounds like, I think the way I thought of it was like anvils, hitting anvils or something industrial with the forward. And that goes right into Don't Stay, which immediately just brought to mind One Step Closer from the last album. It does sound a little similar. It's good, but it's hard to ignore.
It is hard to ignore. It is... I think here's the thing, and this is a weird complaint because I've said this before and used it as an argument against an album before. I think Linkin Park's sound and their general tone in these first couple albums, we'll talk about that later, is very samey. At the same time, I like almost every track they've ever made, and they stand out in their own ways, but their sound has become this sound that is basically not like nobody can recreate this sound, and a lot of their tracks blend together to the extent that I can probably sing along to 90% of like classic Linkin Park music, right? But I couldn't tell you which names of what songs. Like the ones where the chorus is really obvious, sure. 100% down with you, but I do forget the names of these tracks.
I think the choruses here are definitely catchy. Like on Don't Stay, you have the Don't Stay, forget our memories, forget our possibilities. Granted, Chester does have, on this album in particular, he has a lot more melodic and earnest, sincere moments with his singing where he is really conveying the despondency of the lyrics in here. I mean, granted, in Don't Stay's case, it's basically just a diss aimed at their old label management in a way. But
right.
On songs like Somewhere I Belong, Easier to Run, Faint, there's this real just... I can't find the words right now to describe it, but essentially just like you're just done with everything and everyone.
Which is... And this is why it's hard to listen to now, right? With what happened, people don't know the lead singer of Linkin Park committed suicide. And the general raw emotion that comes through on these tracks, right? Like in the light of those events becomes like you always felt it listening to Linkin Park. Like you felt the sincerity in the lyrics, and I think that was one of the strongest parts of his singing, that is screaming and the way this all blended together into magical new rock, like new metal music. But it did become this weird, like, hard to listen to because of how sincerely he may have actually felt those things, versus people go through emotional points through their lives, right? We have moments of darkness, we have moments of sadness, and we can pull from those moments to create those emotions in beautiful songwriting and lyrics. Yet they take on a whole new meaning when they lead to this.
I think this was the beginning of where you feel like you start to know Chester more on a personal level with some of the lyrics here. Like, of course, you have the chorus of "Somewhere I Belong" about wanting to get over your issues and trying to feel something good somewhere and being somewhere where you're accepted for you. And those, of course, are thoughts and feelings that we all have at one point or another. And the fact that it has a very minor key feel with that really nice chopped and sampled acoustic guitar riff in the intro, and then it sort of explodes in the chorus and the bridge. It's an impressive song, and same with "Breaking the Habit," which has the little strings in there, the piano line, and the chorus. It does try and make it seem like this person is going to break the cycle in a way, but it was inspired by a friend of Mike Shinoda's drug addiction, and for a while Chester was unable to perform this live because he felt there were too many parallels between himself and the narrator of the song. Because again, you can tell.
I'm getting chills like talking about this. Like legitimately, like have chills talking about this. I don't know why I picked this album, other than that I love it, and that's weird. And I picked it because last week we talked about Crisis, right?
Yeah.
And part of that heavy metal rock feeling takes me back to that late 2000s era. Right, I know this came out earlier, but late 2000s, this was the music that was rocking my iPod hardcore. And you're going through that hard stage in your life, and I talked about this publicly on many shows in the past, but like, high school was rough. School was hard. And I mean, it seems kind of silly to look at that back now and how stupid all of it really was, right? But like, those emotions hit you hard, and those emotions were clearly hitting Chester and all these lyrics. And because of it, he took that emotion and sang these lyrics better than I think anybody ever could have, right? No one will ever recreate the sound of Linkin Park, ever. And that's an amazing sound.
I have a story.
Yes.
So the day that we're recording this episode, I went to a Staples, your standard Business Depot store, or like they have office supplies, chairs, USB drives, all that. And as my girlfriend and I walk in, we hear someone on one of the display iPhones or something, someone was playing Linkin Park songs on shuffle. And I thought, what a hilariously appropriate time for this. And like one of the songs they played was "Given Up" from Minutes to Midnight. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure that stores shouldn't be playing songs that have swearing in them just in case someone complains, but I guess the management's cool with it.
This is the kind of music that doesn't.
That's an aside, of course.
As much as and I mean, yeah, this is an aside, but like, I never think that Linkin Park crosses. I know there's a couple swear words and stuff in here, right? But I never feel like it crosses the line of inappropriate. Does that?
No, but I think when they diverge from the more nu metal roots, I mean, granted, "Don't Stay" is kind of like that. "Hit the Floor" is probably one of the heaviest songs they've done, but it also reminds me still of a lot of Hybrid Theory or stuff. But I also really liked "Nobody's Listening," which is a completely different beast because it's got that bamboo flute as a sample, and that really adds a completely different feeling to the mix.
It's amazing how they can add any instrument into this sound, and it functionally works. Josh, I went and listened to Linkin Park's latest album. I know this isn't entirely related. The sound that is coming out of its latest album, which I didn't even realize they were still making things. That's kind of how much I disconnect myself from them. It is not the same music at all. I was shocked to hear what I was listening to. It is not metal. It is not new metal. It is not even close. It is almost hip hop pop is how I would describe it.
From what I've heard of One More Light, there are moments though where you still hear the emotion and power of Chester's voice shine through, even if from a music or songwriting perspective, it's lacking compared to albums like this. But again, especially I think in hindsight of the events that occurred a few years ago, a lot of people are tending to be a little bit more generous towards that album in spite of that, or in light of that.
Right.
But
And I haven't listened to the entire album, so take it
with,
all with a grain of salt.
Meteora, they also really put an emphasis on those big choruses. I mean, you had Somewhere I Belong, as I mentioned. You had a little bit of Lying From You, and especially on two of my favorite tracks on here, Faint, which of course a year later they mashed this up with Jay-Z's Gigawatt on the Collision Course EP,
also,
and he actually has performed it with them on a few times. And this is like mid-2000s, so mid-2000s Jay-Z. Could you imagine if this was like late 2000s Jay-Z doing something with Linkin Park? That would have been insane. And just that chorus, is made for stadiums.
One of the other things I appreciate about this album, and it doesn't matter as much as it did at the time when it came out, right, is the inclusion of the live tracks at the end.
Yeah, when I listened to this, I didn't listen to them at all, just because, at least in my experience, I prefer to leave bonus tracks out like that.
I do too.
Unless they actually add something, because I don't think they do in this case.
I appreciate it because of the time when the album came out. To get that is different because a lot of times we had to buy separate live albums, and in a world where we can stream anything we want, I don't care when an artist puts out a separate live album because I can listen to it. I like to give it a listen, always. I usually end up preferring the, traditional studio recorded album. In this case, that 100% applies here. But there is something nice about the inclusion of that experience for me. So I
can definitely see that.
It's like if we were giving these albums points, they get a couple, like, here's a bonus, extra credit kind of thing. Thanks for putting that on there.
If any of you are interested in hearing some live tracks from this album from various aspects or from various points in time, Meteora Live Around the World.
Yeah.
I would recommend checking that out if that interests you. Can we talk about Session? That is pretty cool.
Okay.
That's a pretty neat instrumental. It's basically just, it really throws a wrench in things. And
it does, because it's so different than the rest of the album.
And considering that it was following Nobody's Listening, it basically makes the last 3 tracks on here a really nice bookend to what they were trying to do. And of course, you end an album like Meteora with a song like Numb.
I love Numb. See, this is the thing, Josh. We could list every track on this album, and I'm like, yep, I love that track. I love that track.
I thought it's really solid, and of course the big singles from that time have only grown on me, and some of the deeper cuts on here that I was somewhat familiar with before covering it, I actually have come to like a fair bit of them. But
yeah,
especially with Numb, especially, it's like this is how they close the album out with what became one of their biggest songs. And essentially, it is just a message that is especially
to put
nowadays.
The fact that Numb and Breaking the Habit are both on here, right? Like, those 2 songs stand out forever, and they always will. And that is so impactful, right? Josh, I love this album. I'm glad I listened to it again. I threw it back in my library. I'm happy to have it. it'll always bring a strange emotion to me, right? And that's part of, the curse of what happened, and I shouldn't say curse, right? It's part of the feelings that occur on music. And it's really about how much music and art can affect us. And that's why you and me are here every single week to talk about something we love. Josh, thanks for listening to this album again. Thank you for checking in with us here at Listening In. I'm Dave Moore. That's Josh Weinberg. Of course, if you guys enjoyed this show, you guys can get our t-shirts. Go to forgetbeingcool.com. It's really a bad timing for a plug. But they're over forgetbeingcool.com. If you click on the shop button, you guys can get shirts. They're fun. And it's about sharing the love of music with us. And that's what it's for. If you guys enjoyed this show, hit the like button. If you guys want more, hit the subscribe button. Every Wednesday, Josh and I talk about a different album here on Listening
So,
In.
Dave,
Yes.
What's coming up next week?
I don't know. You can check our website over at forgetbeingcool.com, where I list all the upcoming albums, and you can get our master playlist. Do you have an album?
If you have an album you want us to check out, leave a comment below or let us know on social media, and we'll be happy to take a look at it.
Yes, of course. Please. We'd love to make this a collaborative effort. That's what it is about. It's about listening to music and enjoying what we have.
And then sharing our opinions with you, who hopefully will also share said opinions, and it becomes one giant infinite loop.
Thanks for listening.
Maybe not.
We'll see you guys next week. Bye.
For more great discussions, hit that subscribe button or visit forgetbeingcool.com.